Tibble, and we are going to start with our book. But before we do that, I want you to think about what's coming up and what we're going to be celebrating. That's very close, maybe even the next few days, that would be a holiday that we're going to be celebrating. Okay, so think about that. You might be decorating eggs. You might be dressing up. You might be getting a basket to put eggs in. Okay, so those are some ideas to get you going. You may have already figured it out. It is Easter. And not only do we celebrate with eggs and finding eggs and things like that, but we also celebrate because of Jesus. Jesus is the whole reason that we celebrate Easter. So I'm going to be reading a story today that's going to help us think about that and get us rolling on why we celebrate Easter. It's called The Legend of the Easter Egg. Uh-oh, my dog's coming to visit us. Did you see him? Did you see her? Oh, bummer. Come here, Maddie. Let everybody see you. Let everybody see you. There's Maddie. That's our puppy dog. Maddie says hi. Hope you guys have an animal that you're getting to play with. Whoop. All right, let's get started on our story today. The Legend of the Easter Egg by Lori Wahlberg. What do you see in our picture? See two little kids? What does it look like they're looking at? They have an egg for sure. Where do you think that egg came from? Yeah, the chickens right there maybe? Looks like they live on a farm. Then it might not even be modern day. It looks like they're dressed a little bit differently than we are. Not very many people use this thing in the background. It's called a well or a water pump. That's where they would get their water. They would have to pump it out of the ground first. And now we don't usually do that very much. We just turn on the faucet, but it has to come out of the ground from the very beginning. All right, so let's see what happens. This is kind of set in a different time period. The Legend of the Easter Egg. That means kind of where did the story of the Easter egg come from, okay? The Legend of the Easter Egg by Lori Wahlberg. One April morning when the air was soft and sweet, a boy and his sister went outside to gather eggs. Easter's coming, the little sister said. Let's pretend we're hunting Easter eggs. What are Easter eggs? The boy said. Don't you remember, the girl said. He thought and thought, but he couldn't remember. He was going to ask again, but just then she scared up a hen, squawking from its nest in the grass. Look, she cried, smiling as she held up a rosy brown egg. That night, the boy woke to the sound of his name. Thomas! His mother's face was bent over his. Your sister is sick. Papa must take you away. Thomas let his mother slip off his warm nightshirt, and he held up his arms as she pulled a sweater over his head and sat down when she tugged on his knickers. When she told him that he could not see Lucy, he nodded. When Papa told him where he was taking him, he smiled. But he was really not awake, and he didn't really understand. Look, Mama's face looks very concerned, doesn't she? They don't even have a light that they turned on. They're using candles. So that's before they even had lights to turn on. Oh, looky here. See where he's at? When he woke again, Thomas did not know where he even was. His bedroom was gone. Mama and Papa and Lucy were gone. But before he could even think about being scared, his eyes grew wide and he sat bolt upright. Had he died? Was this heaven? Because all around him was candy. Long branches of licorice, tiny jeweled rock candy, yellow, white, purple, and pink jelly beans, marshmallow chips, and tiny chocolate eggs. He stood up very slowly. Morning, Thomas, a familiar voice said. It was John Sonneman. Thomas had come to stay with John and his new wife, Mary, at their candy store, just as Papa had said he was. To one page. All that Wednesday, Thomas helped Mr. Sonneman in his store. He filled jars of candy. He weighed chocolate on the tippy scales and scrubbed the counter till it gleamed. All day, Mr. Sonneman let him eat smudgeons of fudge and bits of broken peppermint sticks. When he cleaning out the cook stove for Mrs. Sonneman, she looked at him and laughed. "Goodness gracious," she said, "you have ash on your face." With her thumb, she wiped him clean. He smiled, but inside, his heart was feeling as dusty and gray as the ash. His sister was sick, and he couldn't be with her, and there was nothing he could do. On Sunday after church, Thomas went outside to play. At the edge of a small stream, he broke off a young reed, and he put it between his two thumbs, and he blew. A red-winged blackbird sang in reply. Two swallows swirled overhead. "Cheer, cheer," they cried. Suddenly, Thomas threw the reed at them, then snatched up pebbles and threw them too. A robin cocked his head, peering at him with one eye. "Tut, tut," it chided. "Silly birds," Thomas muttered as he turned away. Sounds like he's a little bit upset, doesn't it? What do you think he's upset about? More days passed, and Thomas learned that Lucy had scarlet fever. A red rash was covering her body. Her face burned with fever, and every night at dinner, John Sonneman prayed for her to get well. Sometimes Mary Sonneman felt his forehead. He wished that he could just be sick too, but his body was white and healthy, and his face cool and dry. I wonder why he was wishing he could be sick. On Thursday, Mary sent him out to trade for eggs. When he returned, his shoes and his socks were caked in mud. "Spring," Mary laughed, "so beautiful and so messy at the same time." Kneeling down, she took off his shoes and socks and then cleaned his feet in a pail of warm water. The water tickled his toes, and for the first time in days, he giggled. He's finding something to find joy in, isn't he? Friday dawned bleak and cold. At noon, the stores were closed, and everyone went to church. Thomas listened to the story of Jesus' death. The minister talked for a very long time. "Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be white as snow," he said. While the adults shared bread and wine, Thomas slowly ate a white peppermint. Then he ate a pink peppermint, and for a while he forgot about Lucy. Snuggled under John Sonneman's arm, he fell asleep. He awoke to bedlam. Lanterns and candles flashed against the dark afternoon. Overhead, something terrible battered at the roof of the church. Thomas gripped John Sonneman's hand as the townspeople crowded at the doorway. Peering out, they said, "Hail! Hail!" High above, the church bell swung wildly, pelted by icy pebbles. As the afternoon passed and the hail turned to freezing rain, the bell fell silent, frozen. Oh, all kinds of things are happening, isn't it? Aren't they? This page. That night, as Mary Sonneman tucked him into bed, Thomas asked, "Is Lucy going to die, just like Jesus did?" Oh, that's a big thing for a little boy to deal with, isn't it? Maybe that's what he was so upset about. Maybe he thinks that his sister's going to die. "Shh, shh, shh," said Mary. "She will not die. She's just very sick." "I want to see her," he cried. "I want to be with her." "Soon," Mary said. "She's almost well. You'll see her soon." She put her hand into her pocket and pulled out a small chocolate egg. "Here's your first Easter egg," she said. "Sunday is Easter." On Easter, you will see your sister again. Thomas remembered hunting for eggs, and he remembered the question that Lucy had never even answered. "What are Easter eggs?" he asked again. She pressed the small egg into his palm and wrapped his fingers around it. 3 days after Jesus died, early on Sunday morning, some women came to Jesus' tomb. She said they were sad. They had come to mourn Jesus' death. But when they arrived, they saw the stone had been rolled away from the tomb. See it? Thomas held up his egg. "Did the stone look like this?" Mary laughed. "Yes, only much bigger and much heavier." Mary continued. Then an angel came and told the women that Jesus was not there. He was alive. Filled with joy and fear, the women ran back to tell the other disciples, and that was the first Easter. "But why do we have Easter eggs?" Thomas asked. Mary explained. "Well, just like a chick breaks out of an egg, so Jesus broke free from the tomb of death. Easter eggs remind us that Jesus conquered death and gives us eternal life." "So Lucy won't die?" Mary shook her head. "Well, someday she will, and you will too. But if you believe in Jesus, you will see each other again in heaven. That's the promise and the joy of Easter." She tucked the blanket up under his chin. "Remember," she said, "believe in Jesus, hope and pray. That's what you can do for your sister right now. All right?" "Okay," Thomas agreed. Oh, look at what he's doing. All day Saturday, Thomas stayed inside and colored eggs. Outside, the freezing rain fell, but inside he stood near the glowing cook stove, dipping eggs. As he plunged the cool white eggs into the warm red dye, he thought of Lucy's fever. He remembered the story of the Easter egg, and for the first time in his life, he prayed, all by himself. Do you see something good that's coming out of this whole story? He's learning how to pray, isn't he? Very early Easter morning, before anyone woke up, Thomas filled a basket with colored eggs and slipped out the door. Do you remember what she said he was going to be able to do on Easter morning? Let's see what happens. As he walked, the sun came up, and all around him, the world began to sparkle. See how the words are changing to something exciting? The twigs on the trees and the tiny buds sparkled. The stubbled wheat fields and the long, waving reeds sparkled. Even the ice-bent daffodils and the crushed violets, the trampled crocuses and the battered hyacinth flowers glittered like jewels in the muddy farmyards. Thomas caught his breath. He had never seen anything so beautiful. He passed the cemetery, and the gravestones, too, twinkled in their shining crowns of ice as the church bell began to ring. When he got home, Thomas bounded up the stairs to Lucy's room. Finally, he would see her. Finally, he would tell her of the story of the Easter egg, of his faith in Jesus, his hope for new life, and the love they shared that would never, ever end. The end. And that's the story of why we celebrate Easter, because of what Jesus did for us, that he died and that he rose again. He didn't stay dead. He rose again, just like an egg coming out of the eggshell. Jesus came out of the tomb. And that's what the Easter egg celebrates or symbolizes for Easter. So we're going to go make an Easter snack that we make every single Easter at our house that are called resurrection rolls. And resurrection means the story about Jesus coming up out of the grave and coming back to life. He was resurrected. So that's what we're going to go do now. Join me in the kitchen. See you in a few minutes. Bye.